Welcome back to our channel. That tiny dime in your pocket could be worth hundreds. Like and subscribe to find out which dimes are secretly valuable. The 1970 US 1-dime coin was part of a generation of change rooted more in politics and policy than in physical design. The nation had just ended the turbulent 1960s, and while the headlines focused on civil unrest, the Vietnam War, and space exploration, coinage quietly continued its function with unflinching consistency. The dime, bearing the familiar image of Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse and a torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, remained untouched by aesthetic overhaul. The United States Mint produced these coins at its three major facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, churning them out by the millions. By all appearances, the 1970 dime wasn't designed to stand out. It was meant to serve, to circulate, and to vanish into the rhythm of commerce without fanfare, but the mechanical routine of the mint is never without its margins of error. And in one of those margins, something happened. What would eventually become one of the most puzzling coin mysteries of the modern era started, as it often does, in obscurity. A man named Lionel Griggs, a retired watch repairman with a fascination for microdetails, spent his evenings examining pocket change under a jeweler's loupe. He wasn't a serious numismatist by definition, he hadn't joined any coin club, nor had he ever attended a convention. But he loved what others ignored. He kept a small cigar box of coins that caught his eye for one reason or another. He called it his error graveyard. It was in that box, during an unusually stormy evening in late fall, that he found the 1970 dime that would rewrite the narrative. It wasn't shine or color that caught his attention. It was a shadow. Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse had a strange doubling near the forehead, and the date, 1970, looked unusually thick. The reverse showed more signs. The olive branch's stem appeared doubled, as if vibrating against the flat plane of the coin. More confusingly, the rim appeared uneven, with the reeded edge looking sharper in some areas and nearly smooth in others. Lionel wasn't sure what he was seeing. He suspected machine doubling at first, or perhaps somewhere that created the illusion of depth. But the coin's weight felt slightly different in his hand, lighter, perhaps, but he didn't own a scale fine enough to measure it. What he did own was persistence. He sent the coin to a grading company, with a brief letter explaining he might have found something odd. Weeks later, the report arrived. The coin had been struck on a planchet intended for a foreign denomination, a Canadian 10-cent blank, to be exact. This meant the coin was composed of different metal than standard US dimes of the era. It weighed less, had a different alloy composition, and more importantly, was never supposed to be used in US minting. Somehow, a planchet destined for Canada had been struck with US dime dies, producing a rogue hybrid coin with all the facial features of Roosevelt, but none of the metal origins. But there was more. The coin also exhibited a rare double die obverse, a kind of minting error in which the die used to imprint the design had been improperly prepared, resulting in a second, faint impression misaligned from the first. The doubling affected the year, the word liberty, and parts of Roosevelt's facial profile. It was clean, crisp, and unmistakable under magnification. The grading agency labeled it as a multi-error strike, both a foreign planchet and a double die. Coins with either error were rare. Coins with both were almost unheard of. The numismatic community took notice quickly. Forums began buzzing. A few collectors claimed to have seen similar features on 1970 dimes, but none had been authenticated. The search began in earnest. Dealers across the country received requests for unsearched 1970 dime rolls. One teenager in Michigan claimed to find a coin with doubling on the reverse torch, but it lacked the foreign planchet anomaly. Another collector from Arizona submitted a coin that matched the metal signature but was too worn to confirm its doubling. It was clear now, Lionel had something special. A coin forged in a moment of error, its components sourced from two nations, its strike carrying both a mechanical and human mistake. What began as an afterthought in a cigar box had become a focal point of study. Speculation about the cause deepened the mystery. Some believed the San Francisco Mint, which produced proof coins for collectors, had mistakenly fed Canadian planchets into the dime striking presses during a short production overlap. Others suggested that blank planchets from Canada had been included in error shipments during the Mint's contract production years, when the U.S. Mint occasionally struck coins for other countries. A handful of unverified stories claimed the blanks had arrived mislabeled and were used before inspection caught the problem. Regardless of the cause, the result was undeniable: a small, extraordinary batch of 1970 dimes, nearly indistinguishable by eye alone, scattered into the wild. The coin's value grew in silence. Lionel turned down initial offers, $11,500, then $11,800, then $13,000. A private collector flew out to meet him, offering $19,200 on the spot. Lionel declined again. He wasn't driven by the money. He wanted answers. And more importantly, he wanted to know if others existed. They did. A second confirmed specimen emerged from a retired Navy veteran's coin collection in New Jersey. It bore the same doubling on the date and lettering, with a nearly identical metal composition. A third was located in Oregon, discovered by a grandmother sorting change with her granddaughter. That coin had slightly less visible doubling but matched the weight and planchet characteristics exactly. The grading agencies now had enough data to create a new classification: 1970 Roosevelt dime, foreign planchet with doubled die obverse. Fewer than 10 have been verified as of today. In 2022, Lionel finally agreed to part with the original coin. It was sold through a private auction broker, its details kept discreet, but its sale price leaked within the coin community. The coin fetched $113,000. The sale ignited further interest, and the once forgotten 1970 dime became one of the most discussed modern-era coins. Its story wasn't one of glory by design, it was built on the beauty of accident. A moment of miscommunication, a stray blank, a misaligned die, all converging to produce a coin that never should have existed. And yet, it did. Today, collectors scour 1970 dime rolls for similar traits. Most turn up empty. A few spark hope but fail to meet all the criteria. The confirmed examples remain locked in vaults, appearing only rarely at conventions or private viewings. Their combination of foreign origin, strike error, and perfect timing place them in a league of their own. The very rare 1970 US 1 dime coin, struck in error on a foreign planchet with a double die obverse, now holds a value that ranges between $56,000 and $140,000, depending on condition, clarity of doubling, and provenance. A coin born of mistake, preserved by chance, and valued because it was never meant to be. And somewhere, in a forgotten coffee can or a dusty drawer, another may still be waiting to be found. The 1976 US 1 dime coin emerged during a year steeped in national celebration. As the United States marked its bicentennial, much of the public's attention turned toward specially designed coins minted to honor 200 years of independence. The quarter, half-dollar, and dollar coins received commemorative reverse designs, each carrying the distinctive dual date of 1776 to 1976. But the dime, quietly, went unchanged. It maintained its traditional imagery: Franklin D. Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse and the torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse. It was a coin with no commemorative fanfare, quietly circulating in a country filled with fireworks, parades, and patriotism. Yet, behind the walls of the U.S. Mint, amid the massive minting operations in Philadelphia and Denver, not every coin that passed through the presses was ordinary. One in particular defied the expectation of uniformity, carrying with it the subtle signs of something very wrong, or, as collectors would later come to know it, something very right. It was never meant to be discovered. Certainly not by someone like Miriam Lowell, a retired librarian who had never once attended a coin show or joined a collector's club. Her interest in coins was accidental, spurred by her late husband's dusty coin folders left behind in a shoebox beneath their guest room bed. The folders contained mostly wheat pennies and common Jefferson nickels. But Miriam was methodical, as any good librarian would be, and she set out to sort through every last coin with quiet determination. In a roll of dimes tucked into an old red envelope, she found one that didn't feel quite right. The rim was thinner than the others. The coin itself seemed just slightly off-center. She noticed that Roosevelt's eye looked almost doubled. She held it up to the light. then brought it closer to her glasses. The torch on the reverse also had a subtle ghostly outline, as if the design had shifted mid-strike. It wasn't dramatic, but it wasn't like the others. Not knowing what to make of it, Miriam set the coin aside, placing it between the pages of a heavy book on presidential speeches. For weeks it remained there, pressed like a flower, until a friend of her late husband visited and suggested it might be worth sending to a professional grading service. Weeks passed. When the report finally came, it confirmed something that even experts would call unusual: a rare double die error on both obverse and reverse, combined with evidence that the coin had been struck on a transitional planchet, a leftover blank from a previous year's coinage, not meant for dimes at all. The weight was off. The metal content didn't perfectly match standard Roosevelt dimes. It was, by all definitions, a misfit. What made this discovery even more compelling was the date, 1976. A year of extreme scrutiny in the U.S. Mint. A year where most focus was on the bicentennial coinage. A year when inspectors were watching the presses more closely than ever. And yet, this error had slipped through, evading detection, vanishing into circulation with millions of others. The coin community responded with equal parts skepticism and intrigue. A 1976 dime with both a planchet error and a double die? It was almost too much. But more examples began to surface, quietly, and never in large numbers. A man in Montana found a dime with a similar doubled torch. A collector in Virginia noticed a Roosevelt portrait with abnormal thickness in the letters of liberty and the motto "In God We Trust." After comparison, these coins began to form a pattern. A very small batch, minted likely during a narrow window at the Philadelphia Mint, had been struck using improperly aligned dies, and an incorrect planchet batch, possibly left over from experimental runs or mint transitions. The torch's flames showed doubling under magnification, creating the illusion of flickering motion. The olive branch's leaves overlapped awkwardly in some areas, like ghost prints. Roosevelt's facial features, especially his mouth and nose, looked heavier than normal. But perhaps most subtly, the edges of the coin revealed the real secret: faint striations that suggested it had been pressed on a thinner, slightly mis-sized blank. It was a coin out of alignment with its peers in every sense. Speculation spread. Some theorized that a small batch of dime planchets was incorrectly substituted with blanks intended for foreign coin contracts, a practice not unheard of at the Mint during the 1970s. Others believed the Mint was experimenting with different compositions in anticipation of cost-saving changes. There was no official record of such changes being authorized for the 1976 dime, but gaps in Mint documentation left room for theory. What couldn't be denied was that the coin, once verified and certified, began to rise in value almost immediately. The first example sold quietly for under $2,000. But within a year, that same coin resold for $6,800 to a private collector in California. The momentum grew. Each confirmed coin fetched a higher price than the last. The fact that the coin came from a year when the nation's eyes were on every piece of patriotic symbolism made its quiet error even more poetic. It was the coin that didn't change in appearance, yet changed everything. Collectors now refer to it unofficially as the quiet bicentennial error. A coin minted during America's loudest birthday celebration, but carrying a secret that would take decades to decode. It didn't need stars, stripes, or special designs to stand out. It only needed the invisible signatures of error. Perhaps the most surprising twist came when a fourth specimen surfaced at a flea market in Ohio. A teenage boy, trading coins with other local hobbyists, pulled the dime from a jar marked 10 cents each. He had no idea what he held until an older dealer offered him $500 on the spot. Suspicious, the boy's father sent it in for grading. It came back a match. Not only was it struck on a transitional blank, but the double die markings were the clearest of any found to date. That coin sold at auction $4.97000. As more examples appeared, the price range began to settle. While not as plentiful as some other mint errors, the 1976 dime with these characteristics now occupies a sacred space in numismatics. A collector's dream, not because of what it looks like at first glance, but because of what lies beneath, the story it tells, the silence it kept, and the timing that made it all possible. Today, the very rare 1976 US 1 dime coin, struck on an improper planchet and bearing double die features, commands a value ranging from $50,000 to $120,000 depending on its condition, strike clarity, and provenance. A small coin from a grand year, proving that even in a nation celebrating its history, the tiniest mistakes can become treasures beyond imagination.